It's time to take this battle to the streets. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we'll be pitting two of the biggest side-scrolling beat-em-up franchises against one another, Final Fight and Streets of Rage. Get ready to knock over a few barrels, eat an entire chicken, and stay on the same screen until all of those thugs are knocked out. Yeah, now we can start. Round 1. Combat. The basic mechanics of both games are simple enough. Step 1, beat up the thugs. Step 2, fight the boss. Step 3, profit? In Final Fight, each character has their own unique fighting style, and each character is also able to pick up a weapon and use it against their opponents. Streets of Rage works in a similar fashion, but there's a few little details that make the combat feel like more than just a Final Fight clone. Not only does each character have their own style, but each character has their own advantages and disadvantages. This means that you have to think about what style suits you the best, especially if you're playing co-op with a friend. Let's look at the first game as an example. Adam is extremely powerful and can jump higher than other characters. However, he's the slowest on the team. Axel fixes that by being powerful and fast, but he's not so great at jumping. And while Blaze may be the weakest among them, she makes up for it with her speed and jumping. While both games definitely helped define the beat-em-up genres, Streets of Rage does combat a bit better than Final Fight by offering more variety with the characters and their skills. As strong as the Final Fight cast is, the ex-cops also have speed and agility on their side, and at least one police officer friend serving as backup for one game. Winner, Streets of Rage. Round 2, graphics and sound. Both games feature a similar story about taking back the crime-infested streets, but each one approached it in their own way. Final Fight is much brighter and more colorful despite the decrepit state the city is in. Streets of Rage, on the other hand, is dark and gritty at times to highlight a city at its breaking point. The character models for Final Fight are more detailed than the sprites in Streets of Rage, but the gameplay feels smoother for the latter, especially for the console releases, which we'll delve into later. When it comes to sound, Final Fight has a decent soundtrack. It's not the kind of music you'd like to listen to outside of the game, but it does serve its purpose as you set off to take down the Mad Gear Gang. This is not the case with Streets of Rage. To say that the soundtrack is amazing is kind of an understatement. A mix of techno, a dash of house, and clear hip-hop influence created some of the best soundtracks that the Genesis had to offer. The music of the game sets the tone, and frankly, it gets you in the mood to punch as many thugs as you can. It feels like the developers invested just as much time with the soundtrack as they did with the overall game. With that in mind, we have to give this round to Streets of Rage. Not only is it great to look at, it's great to listen to, and you have to respect a game that treats its music like a core part of the gaming experience. Round 3, characters.
Hi! Having fun?
So just who are these people that eat meat out of barrels? After the Mad Gear Gang kidnaps the beautiful Jessica, we meet the core cast of Final Fight. Jessica's boyfriend, Cody, Cody's friend, Guy, and one of the coolest mayors in video game history, Mike Hagar, who just so happens to be Jessica's father. Yep, before Liam Neeson, there was Mike Hagar, who body slammed his way through the streets to save his daughter. While the character roster does change throughout the series, you can bet that one of these guys are involved in the story somehow. Meanwhile, over at the rageful streets, we have 3 ex-cops who are trying to make the city a safe place to live. Adam, Axel, and Blaze have to face off against the mysterious Mr. X, which is a daunting task since he's even got the police force on his side. Much like Final Fight, the character roster does change throughout the series, but again, these 3 are always involved in the plot somehow. That being said, we feel that Final Fight wins this round hands down. The characters of the series are just so damn memorable. In fact, Mike Hagar alone is enough to win this round, but he's a generous man who leaves room in the spotlight for Cody, Guy, and let's be honest, Poison, Hugo, Rolento, and Sodom, because even Final Fight's random thugs and bosses stand out. We'll see you all in Street Fighter.
Let's have some fun.
Round 4, home console version.
You son of a... What have you done to her?
When you run out of quarters, and trust us we did, then it's time to take the fight to your living room. if you had a Super Nintendo, then Final Fight was the beat-em-up game of choice. Meanwhile, the Sega Genesis opened its arms to Streets of Rage. Huh, it's as if they knew that there was a console war going on.
I've been promoting you two, so don't embarrass me.
Anyway, while it's great to be able to play an amazing game in the comfort of your own home, the SNES port of Final Fight paled in comparison to its arcade counterpart. And no, it's not because of the censored content, it's because of the gameplay. While we know that limitations are to be expected with ports, Final Fights were kinda severe. This goes beyond a stage being removed and there being less enemies on screen. We also missed out on a character, Guy, and co-op was completely removed. No co-op in a beat-em-up? Eesh, you've basically already lost. Streets of Rage really lucked out by being exclusive to the Genesis. While Final Fight dominated the arcades, Streets of Rage really gained momentum on console. The SNES Final Fight was still fun, but knowing all the content that we were missing out on was really a letdown. This was kinda fixed with the release of Final Fight Guy, which replaced Cody with Guy, but that had a limited release in the US. There was also Final Fight CD, but come on, how many of us actually owned a Sega CD so we could take in those glorious, fully acted cutscenes?
Guy, Jessica was kidnapped.
Jessica?
While subsequent sequels did have co-op, it was really too late, as Streets of Rage already had that taken care of. Don't cry, Final Fight, we'll always have a few extra quarters for you. Winner, Streets of Rage. Round 5, Legacy.
Tell me why.
Look, I don't need a reason.
Streets of Rage is a pretty remarkable entry in the history of the Sega Genesis. Adam, Axel, and Blaze are some of the main reasons we entered the 16-bit era. The gameplay, the soundtrack, yeah, that soundtrack, man. Streets of Rage will live on as the ultimate beat-em-up experience. But without Final Fight, Streets of Rage wouldn't even be here. Streets of Rage was essentially created for the sheer purpose of going up against Final Fight, which really puts its superior home console version into perspective. It was and still is one of the best things about console wars, other companies giving it their all to compete against one another.
It's like I told you, fight by myself nowadays.
At the time, Final Fight was the beat-em-up game for the day, an impressive feat for a game that wasn't even supposed to be a beat-em-up. Once upon a time, Final Fight was going to be a sequel to Street Fighter, but Mike Hagar, Cody, and Guy apparently had other plans.
Hey, she's my friend too. Count me in.
Not only does Final Fight live on through the likes of Street Fighter, but it lives on for giving us some of the best that the 90s had to offer. Because of Final Fight, we were gifted with Streets of Rage, and arguably other great side-scrolling beat-em-up adventures. With all due respect to the Genesis kids, this one's gotta go to Final Fight. After all those beatdowns and dumpster raids for food, Streets of Rage emerges on top of this battle. Though, with a legacy like Final Fights, we can't see the destroyers of the Mad Gear Gang too upset about this decision.
Listen to reason, man. Why make your job difficult?
But we're still a bit curious. Which side of the streets do you stand on? Keep the battle going in the comments, and don't forget to punch that subscribe button for more intense versus matches here at WatchMojo.com.
Sorry, guys.
When you're raised in Hell's Kitchen, you're bound to have a little devil in ya. Welcome to WatchMojo, and today we'll be reduxing our comic book origins of Daredevil, the man without fear. As with most comic book characters, there are often reimaginings and different versions to a character's past. We have chosen to primarily follow the storyline which unfolded in 1993's and 94's Daredevil the Man Without Fear numbers 1 to 5, which was expanded upon in 2011's Daredevil Yellow number 1.
First thing you gotta understand is nobody feels sorry for you and nobody ever will. Because when it comes to being born lucky, you won the friggin' lottery.
I did.
As readers learned in Daredevil number 1, the acrobatic vigilante known as Daredevil was Matt Murdock, the son of a small-time boxer.
Sorry you lost, Dad.
Yeah, just wasn't my night.
When he was young, Matt saw a truck about to hit an old man crossing the street. Matt dove in front of the truck, pushing the old man safely out of the way. In the chaos, chemicals from the truck spilled out onto Matt, causing him to go blind.
I can't see! I can't see!
However, those same chemicals also gave him heightened senses, which more than compensated for his lack of sight. Learning Braille, he continued to go to school and started on the path towards law school, also meeting Foggy Nelson, a man who would go on to become his best friend.
Me and you, Maverick and Goose, no secrets.
Goose died, and he was married.
Details.
Daredevil's origin was expanded upon many years later. In 1993's Daredevil, The Man Without Fear, audiences are introduced to many aspects of DD's backstory that would go on to become staples of the character. Having been born and raised in Manhattan's legendarily rough Hell's Kitchen, Matt's early life was very difficult. Matt's father, Jack, was a second-rate prizefighter who was forced to become a strong-arm man for a crook named the Fixer.
You got all this for losing?
Sometimes, even when you get knocked down, you can still win.
This ultra-bad news dude threatened to kill Matt if Jack didn't do what he said. Jack only wanted for his son to get out of Hell's Kitchen. He made Matt promise to do well in school and to not get into fights, telling him to ignore the ironic taunts of Daredevil from his schoolmates. In this story, we also learn that Matt's heightened senses were discovered by a mysterious man named Stick. Stick began to train Matt, whose skills and abilities expanded exponentially.
Feel the breeze. You got heart, kid. Heart's not enough.
Meanwhile, Matt's father Jack had seen a resurgence in his career in the ring and was on his way to becoming a potential champ. Unfortunately, the Fixer was responsible for his career comeback, having secretly rigged many of the matches leading up to the championship fight. He demanded that Jack throw this big fight. When Jack refused, the Fixer's men made him pay with his life. Matt hunted down his father's killers, beating 4 of them to a pulp and scarring the Fixer so bad that he died of a heart attack. When he attempted to catch the last killer, Matt accidentally pushed a woman from a window, letting her fall to her death. Stick, disgusted by this, abandoned Matt. He also revealed that Matt and one other person were the only adepts of this age, and that the other person had already chosen a path of evil to follow. A few years later, in law school, Matt met that other person, a fascinating young woman named Elektra.
Is it yours?
It is. Until we get caught.
The daughter of a wealthy man with connections, she became as drawn to Matt as he was to her, and a relationship developed. But Elektra had a very dark side, and Stick returned to warn Matt about her. That really didn't matter in the end, as Elektra broke things off of her own accord to keep Matt safe, as she had begun to develop genuine feelings for him.
I win. The first round, baby. We're just getting started.
At the same time, things were getting a lot worse in Hell's Kitchen. A vile, ruthless leader known as the Kingpin had taken over, stopping at nothing to boost his profits, including child slavery. Now a promising lawyer, Matt had paid a visit to his old neighborhood and discovered a teenager named Mickey living in his father's abandoned gym. They developed a friendship, and when Mickey was kidnapped by associates of the Kingpin, Matt went after them. Having continued to develop his senses, he was able to track her and rescue her, laying waste to the Kingpin's #1 assassin along the way.
Tell me. Who does he work for?
The kid.
I want a name! Fisk! Wilson Fisk!
After this adventure, Matt knew his place was back in Hell's Kitchen. He and his law school roommate, Foggy Nelson, set up an office in the neighborhood, and Stick even gave Matt his blessing. Donning a costume, Matt adopted the nickname that school kids had taunted him with, Daredevil, as his new moniker, and a hero was born. A few small additions and changes have been made to Daredevil's origins since the 1990s. In the 2011 miniseries Yellow, a few details emerged that are worth mentioning. For example, after Jack Murdock refused to throw his fight, signing his own death warrant, he gave Matt his favorite yellow robe. It was this robe that formed the basis of Daredevil's first costume, which was yellow and red. In addition to this, Matt also tried to let justice take its proper course with his father's killers. It was only when they beat the system that Matt took matters into his own hands and became Daredevil. As one of Marvel's most popular and distinctive characters, it's only natural that the Man Without Fear should make the leap from comics to other media. Although the 2003 film adaptation was met with a mixed reception, Old Hornhead has been much more warmly received on the small screen. Are you a fan of the fearless hero they call Daredevil? For more awe-inspiring comic book origins and top 10s published every day, be sure to subscribe to WatchMojo.
Давай, быстрее!